Information discussed in this podcast may be sensitive in nature to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Kristina Branum, a happy-go-lucky teenager in 2006, was planning a future after high school. She was engaged to her boyfriend of 1 year, Christopher Mettendorf, and she had plans to join the U.S. Army after she graduated high school. Christopher and Kristina were living together with Christopher's mother in Savannah, Tennessee. On July 7th, 2006, the couple went out and did some shopping together. They returned to their apartment, putting their bags on their bed, and they would at some point leave before Christopher's mom got home. Later that afternoon, Christopher's dad called to say that the two never showed up to his place as they had planned. And by now, everyone began calling Christopher and Kristina looking for them. After a full day of not being able to reach either Kristina or Christopher, they were finally reported as missing to the Hardin County Sheriff's Department. Their car would be found abandoned just 4 days later, and everyone now feared the worst. To date, Kristina and Christopher have not been found. Where are Christopher Mettendorf and Kristina Branum? Hello, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Where Are They podcast, and a second episode in our series of missing couples. Thank you all so much for being a supporter of our show and allowing these stories to get out there one way or another. When a couple goes missing together, their stories become forever entwined. And in a way, it opens the door to even more possibilities of what may have happened to them and where they may be. Sadly, this story is about two young people who were just preparing to start their lives together. Kristina hadn't even graduated high school yet, and she had plans to join the U.S. Army. Christopher was 21 years old, and while we don't know much about his future plans, we do know that he was planning on marrying Kristina and building a life with her. The couple at this time was living in Savannah, Tennessee, which is located in Hardin County. Savannah is a small town just east of Memphis and south of Nashville. Without too much knowledge of their lives prior to their disappearance, let's get right into that fateful day of July 27th, 2006. On Thursday, July 27th, 2006, a normal Tennessee summer day, Christopher and Kristina had decided to go out and do some shopping. After a while, they came back to the apartment they were staying at, which was Christopher's mother's place. They would put their shopping bags on their bed before walking out the door and leaving before Christopher's mother would come home from work. When she did get home, his mom, Cheryl, noted right away that the pair wasn't home. Of course, they are 17 and 21 years old. It's a summer day. She figured they'd be home later. But instead of seeing her son and his fiancée walk through the door, she received a phone call from her ex-husband, Christopher's father. Kristina and Christopher were supposed to come over to his place that afternoon, but they never showed up, and they weren't answering their phones either. And he was calling to check up on them and see where they were, hoping that maybe they were still at the apartment. But they weren't, and Cheryl had no idea. She checked their room and found their recently purchased shopping bags on their bed. Now she began to call them too, realizing something just didn't feel right. They never answered their phones. Finally, the next day, July 28th, 2006, they were officially reported as missing. And it's no shock to anyone that the efforts to search for these two were minimal, at least by the authorities, in the beginning. They were young adults. It was summer. They were thought to just be off with friends. But those close to Kristina and Christopher knew better. This was significantly out of character for them. Something was definitely wrong. And alarm bells would go off even further when their car was found abandoned just 4 days later with their cell phone sitting on the passenger seat and some other personal belongings still in the car. Their 1994 Geo Prism was found 50 miles away in Lawrence County. A report had come into authorities about a suspicious car parked near a church in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. When police got there to check it out, they found the car unlocked. They saw the cell phone immediately, and they used that to call a contact in the phone, which turned out to be Christopher's grandfather. But there was no sign of the young couple anywhere around the car. It's important to note here that there was a pond next to the car, and there are varying reports on if that pond was searched. Some publications say it was, and some say it wasn't. It might not even matter, as it's also quite possible they left that area after leaving their car there. Police did find a witness that said they saw the car being parked there. They also saw a young couple get out of that car and into another car. But all they knew about this other car was that someone had pulled up in it and it was white. Authorities would have no idea who this other car belonged to or who it could have been, or even why Kristina and Christopher were in Lawrence County. Cheryl, Christopher's mother, wasn't giving up hope and continued to look for her son and his fiancée. She went through and searched Christopher's room for clues and ended up finding a lockbox with items belonging to a man by the name of George Eddie Baugus. Cheryl started to wonder if maybe Christopher and Kristina had stolen these items from him, and maybe he had come after them for revenge. George Eddie Baugus did have quite a criminal record and a reputation for such, and it was never really specified what those items were, but they were significant enough to cause some worry for Cheryl. Detectives now ramped up their search for the young couple, and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, TBI, joined the investigation as well. Clues came in and sightings from all over. Leads were followed up on that took authorities to Atlanta, Georgia, Knoxville, and even Oklahoma. But nothing was discovered to lead them to Kristina or Christopher. Meanwhile, other rumors started flying around also, terrible rumors. Christopher's mother believes that it was George Eddie Baugus, however, that is responsible for their disappearance. Baugus was killed by his ex-wife in 2010 during a domestic dispute. Interestingly, Baugus's wife, Shannon, would also be acquitted of all charges, and he had injured her quite significantly during this attack as well. Season 12 of the TV show Snapped was her story, and the plotline for that episode simply reads, quote, "A wife refuses to watch a Star Wars cartoon with her husband, so he strikes her, and she strikes back." End quote. Could Shannon have possible knowledge of what happened to Kristina and Christopher? Savannah, Tennessee, where Christopher and Kristina were from, is a small, quaint Tennessee town located about 2 hours east of Memphis. Savannah has just around 7,000 residents. Directly to the east from Savannah, about 50 miles, is Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, where Kristina and Christopher's car was found. If the witness statement is accurate and they did get into someone else's car there, it is most likely that they knew that person. It was never stated if the car had broken down, causing that to be the reason for the car to be where it was. The city of Lawrenceburg is the county seat of Lawrence County, Tennessee, with just over 11,000 residents. It is the largest city on the state's southern border between Chattanooga and Memphis, and it sits on the banks of the Shoal Creek. Now, Shoal Creek is called a creek, but it is a significant waterway. And there is a lot of rural land surrounding Lawrenceburg. Davy Crockett State Park sits adjacent to the city, and Laurel Hill Wildlife Management Area is also a short drive away. And that area has 15,000 acres of protected land for wildlife. It's hard to say if George Eddie Boggess was indeed responsible. What did he do with Christopher and Kristina? Is there anyone else out there that knows these answers? Or did Boggess take that information with him to the grave? Boggess's daughter vehemently states that her father was innocent of this crime and that he was not involved. But she would have been a very young girl when this happened, and she was only 10 years old when he passed away. Does she maybe know more about this crime? Has she been questioned? Or is she just a daughter sticking up for her father? We don't know much more about their disappearance today than we did 17 years ago. But there is still a family, two families, desperately looking for their loved ones. To make matters even more heartbreaking for the Branum family, Kristina's brother would be shot and killed by his employer just 2 years later in 2008. Could Christopher and Kristina have just run off together? Or did they meet with foul play? What do you think happened to Christopher Mettendorf and Kristina Branum? Christopher Mettendorf is described as a Caucasian male standing 5 foot 5 inches tall and weighing around 120 pounds at the time he was last seen in July of 2006. He also has a burn scar between his thumb and his forefinger. He was last seen wearing a t-shirt, blue jeans, white sneakers, and a white baseball cap. Kristina is described as a Caucasian female who stood 5 foot 2 inches tall and weighed around 150 pounds when she was last seen, also July of 2006. She has brown hair and brown eyes. She also has a tattoo of a rose on her right hip. Anyone with any information on either Kristina Branum or Christopher Mettendorf, please contact the Hardin County Sheriff's Department at 731-925-3377 or the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation at 1-800-TBI-FIND. Thank you all so much for listening to the stories of Kristina and Christopher today. Two young people who had their whole lives ahead of them still. Anyone who has any case suggestions for us or any series ideas that you would like to send us, please shoot me an email at canwefindthem@gmail.com. We will be back very soon with another unsolved missing persons case. And until then, stay safe and hug your loved ones.